It's the exact same thing as like when I was in the field and we do an entire job and I'd run out of panduit straps for the duct work and the devil on my shoulder would be like, Zach, just don't put a panduit on these last few ducts. Inspector will never tell. He doesn't even check. They don't even crawl in the crawl space half the time. Truth. Sometimes the inspector just looks down and goes, yep, there's duct work. Check. Everything's great. If the system's already running, to be like, is it cool inside? Yeah. All right, good. Put your hand over each one of the floor vents. You're good to go. Not all inspectors are like that. Some inspectors are really, 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 really anal. It's the best description I have for them. I remember a guy, and I want to say his name, maybe it was Scott Hall. Could be Scott Hall. I'm going to use his name. Actually, I don't think that's it. I think I grew up with a guy named Scott Hall, actually. It just got jumbled up in my memory. And I remember this guy pretty precisely, except for his name. He inspected the beach area in Hanover County, which is Wrightsville Beach, which is one of our nicer beaches. Some of you who live on the East Coast, Middle East Coast, might have actually heard about this beach. A little bit north of Myrtle Beach. So this guy was to the nth degree. He's one of those guys where we had like a chase. This is a story I always remember. We had a chase where we had line sets and stuff run up through there, and he didn't think it was sufficiently draft stopped. So when you have like a line set or a drain back in the day, you draft stop it when it passed through the top plate or bottom plate of a wall. The top plate or bottom plate of the wall is like that double 2x4 you see at the very top, and a double 2x4 you see at the bottom of the wall. So you drill through it, you draft stop. And back in the day, you would use fiberglass insulation. You just put it into the hole and that would draft stop it. It wasn't fire stop, it was draft stop. So along comes this guy, and he wants us to start fire stopping all these holes, even though that the chase itself was open. So just imagine this. There's a square chase running up a couple stories and like a drain and a line set running up one of the walls of the chase, and everything's open. And this guy wants us to fire stop when everything else is open. So that's some of the things you get into. Now, I understand that it probably became the code at some point and it switched over, because I know when we started it was all draft stopping and then it became fire stopping. And there's certain applications where if there's different tenants, like a commercial setting, you have to go even further. You have fire collars where you might have like a fresh air duct that passes through a firewall. And a firewall is a wall that is in place to prevent fire spreading within a certain time limit. Like you might have like a 1 hour firewall or a 2 hour firewall, and they'll put up like a double layer of sheetrock, and there's stipulations to it. I don't recall. I think it's like a single layer sheetrock and a double layer sheetrock, and that prevents a certain amount of fire spread within an allotted time period. Just somebody came up with that. And those are more stringent. I mean, you'll have fire dampers, which are horrible. Anyone who's ever used fire dampers know that they suck. And just they block the ductwork. They're a pain to set up sometimes. You have to get a specific fire damper. They cost a ton of money. And all of a sudden you're getting a fire damper and all this angle to put them on, and it's just a pain in the butt. And that's the inspector we had for a lot of those jobs. So he would be all over the stuff, even the stuff that didn't make sense. Sometimes we were just mad because we did something wrong or forgot to do something, and I guess that's human. But sometimes it was like, this doesn't make any sense. But there wasn't any convincing, because technically we did have to do it. It just didn't make any sense to do it. But whatever. It's like putting stud guards on the inside of a chase. There's no sheetrock. But if someone did decide to nail into that top plate, even though they could see the line set, then they would puncture it. That would be an idiot, though. But I guess you have to protect against idiots, because the world does have a lot of idiots in it. Then you have the opposite. The opposite inspector is the guy who doesn't even look in the crawl space. We had that guy. The famous story I have, and I still remember his name. He's passed on now. His name was Billy. He was a good old boy. You ever heard about the country guys, good old boys? Well, this was a good old boy. And I remember him bringing his dog to the inspection, which is a sign that the inspection is going to be done poorly, I think. Because when they bring the dog and they're playing with the dog outside, you've already brought a distraction with you that's going to take away from your attention to detail on the job. We were in the crawl space of this house finishing the job. My father had called in the inspection. We were rushing to finish the job before he got there. He arrived early. He didn't even look in the crawl space. We were down there working, doing the ductwork. Had he looked through the crawl space door, he would have seen us doing runouts. And runouts are, for those of you who don't do a lot of install stuff, are just a little flex ducts. They can be hard pipe ducts. They go from your main trunk to your floor boots. or whatever you call them. I call them boots. I don't know what else you could call them, drops or something like that, but they go to where your floor grills are at. We were tying all those in, and he just passed a job. I was like, okay, all right. Sometimes you have that. I just recently had an inspector on a job I was working on pass a job, and there wasn't even any ductwork in the crawl space yet. He just didn't even look. There was no ductwork there. I get the calls like the job passed. I was like, there's no ductwork yet. Because on this particular job, the inspections were getting called in. I wasn't calling them in. They were just calling them in. I was like, well, it's a miracle. That job was unpassed by the next inspector that noticed there was no ductwork in the crawl space. Oh.